So yeah, I was mainly working with the Living Wage Commission, which is an all-volunteer commission that was really started in 2002 and is responsible for enforcing the Living Wage Ordinance in the city of Buffalo. I was really excited to work on this. I've worked a little bit with the Tompkins County Living Wage campaign back in Ithaca. And what was so great was I was both working with the policy side and kind of learning how a nonprofit functions, but also I was able to see how the living wage impacts workers in their day-to-day lives. So it mandates that any company with a contract with the city with 10 or more employees and $50,000 like as the value of the contract must pay all their workers a living wage, which this year was $11.28 an hour if health benefits are provided, and $12.66 if not, and it's going to go up in 2015 with a cost of living adjustment. So the first thing I kind of did was go through all of like the quarterly reports that employers have to submit that details all of their employees and what they're being paid. And you'd think that, if they're sending it to us and we're the commission, they'd, be on top of it, but there's actually several instances of employers who weren't paying their workers a living wage or weren't properly reporting. So it's kind of interesting to see how, even though this is the law, a lot of people, just because it is a volunteer commission that's run by a lot of very busy, very important people, kind of like try to slip through. So I worked with those companies to try to bring them into compliance, inform them of the law, make sure that the workers receive back pay, that kind of stuff. What's interesting about the living wage is it's awesome and it's way higher than the minimum, obviously, and a lot of these jobs before the implementation of the ordinance would have been minimum wage jobs, but for a lot of workers, it's still not enough to combat inequality. So like MIT has a living wage calculator where you can look up your city and kind of look at different groups. So it might be like a single parent or a single adult, one child. For example, single parent, it's below Buffalo's living wage, but you had a child and to get by, it's $20 an hour almost, which, sounds really high, but it sort of shows how like this is one step in combating inequality, but there's definitely a lot more to be done. So I got to interview some workers for my report I wrote on the state of the living wage, one of whom was a cashier at Buffalo Civic Auto Ramps. And he kind of talked to me about he's making a little bit above the living wage, but he's been working there for 42 years. So a lot of these jobs also aren't just entry-level positions that people are going to move out of. These are what they're doing for their work their whole life. And as he said, it can be hard to get by and balance everything between rising costs of medical care, transportation, all that. So it was really great to be able to put a human face on the ordinance and kind of take it out of like the dry policy world and put it into like practice with real people, and hopefully when we send that report around to the different employers, they'll kind of get to see that and sort of humanize the whole thing. So currently there's 14 companies covered. So I would write to them. A lot of them had submitted reports from 12, 13. This year a couple new companies came under the ordinance, so I worked with them so they knew that they had to report, that they had to post living wage information in the workplace, make sure their employees knew about like all the different options open to them. So that was really interesting to kind of get a sense of all of these different groups in Buffalo who contract with the city and how the scope of the ordinance really goes from like janitorial services to cashiers to landscape workers. There's like a huge range of different people affected. So another cashier at BCAR kind of talked about she'd been working there for 8 years and had worked at the airport before that, and sort of talked to me about how she's getting older, but she just can't afford to retire. Saving up is hard. If you have like a medical emergency or something that, it can be really hard to get by, even with living wage work, which kind of gives a sense. Before the ordinance went into effect, they were receiving $6 an hour about, so this was back in 06 they came under compliance. But like, this was a significant difference in their wages. They went up to $9 an hour, now they're at $11.38. But it still, is a struggle every day. So what was interesting is there are a lot of groups like the city itself who aren't reporting, so we really don't have a solid sense right now of how many workers are affected, because there's tons of city workers who should be being paid the living wage. There's also a temp agency that I worked with that sort of tried to weasel their way out of it by saying that they were like a subcontractor, so it shouldn't count. So there's a lot of different ways that it seems like employers kind of try to get out of it. So it was impressive to see how like even for something that's relatively small in scope, only 14 companies right now are covered, there's still so much work that needs to be done to get them to comply. And then I also talked to some people who paid above living wages and kind of talked about like why high wages make a difference in terms of absenteeism and turnover and, you know, staying competitive. So it's not like every company is bad.